Welcome to the Dog Trainers Podcast,
a podcast created by dog trainers for dog trainers or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend. One thing I wanted to ask you, Vinny, so kind of going back to, before there was, TikTok dog trainers and before there was Instagram dog trainers, they're like me personally, I learned a lot like on Learberg. I learned a lot on, online. Ian Dunbar, he had all his stuff out there. I learned a lot of stuff for myself, people that fell into my lap or that I sought out. Who were some people, growing up in the dog training game that you found their content in whatever form and you followed them, you read their books? Give us some of that story if you can.
Yeah, man. So it started with Paul Loeb, who was a dog trainer. I think it was back in the 80s. I have both of his books, and it's funny because his first book is more old school killer method training, and then his second book is significantly more progressive. And then I have two monks books, which early on, those are just really good books. And offer a tremendous insight. And I'll explain that later. And then about 4 years ago, I found Learberg, and that to me was important because Michael explained it in ways that, like I explain everything in very simple terms because that's how I learn. And then you hear him explain it in the most professional way possible, and then immediately dumb it down so everybody else can understand it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And it's like, whoa, that is such a good skill and like he's saying these things. I'm like, dude, I swear I do these things. I just have there was so much behind it. Yeah. And that really helped. That brought a lot to the table. Who else? There's more books. And we talked about Caesar. Obviously he was like one of my biggest inspirations of all time. Which I think every dog trainer, like I said before, loved him, but they also all started following, I did everything that he did to a T, and then you go opposite of the spectrum, back and forth, and you're like, okay, then you eventually find your...
Yeah, like I did Caesar stuff before I even did leash stuff, like I did that. That was like my first couple years of foundation working at shelters, was just a lot of energy stuff and body language stuff and eye contact stuff and, slip lead and let's go for a walk and that kind of stuff. And, that gave me some form of a structure to follow. And then when I got onto actually learning tools, I was just like, oh, these things just make things a little bit easier. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Smoother too, right?
Smoother, easier to communicate,
Yeah. And people hear the word easier and they take that the wrong way. You know what I mean? Right. There's buzzwords that whether it's other trainers or people will try to hammer you on, and easier is a fucking buzzword. Like efficient.
Yeah,
exactly. And it makes it less stressful for everybody, right? Especially if you know how to properly handle a tool, it will make it less stressful for the dog. It makes it less stressful for the person. And the communication is it is smoother. I was going to say the word easier, but once again, that's a buzzword.
Well, I like that you bring that up because a question that I was just about to ask you was, how do you kind of dance that line between buzzwords that everybody has decided they don't like anymore, versus still making the point? Because sometimes that buzzword is like the word, right? And I find it very interesting. This is something that I've learned, just working with clients over time, is the words that you decide to use to describe something kind of depends on the person and what they resonate with. And, some people just don't like certain words, but yeah, I mean, how do you dance that line?
Well, and that's where I believe, why we're so successful as a company as whole, just because of the employees that we have, who, by the way, if I may, just one subtle brag, I do have the greatest employees of all time. Yeah. And, people see my fucking face on social media, right? Just because I have the best looking hair and I'm the best looking in the company. So it is what it is, right?
The best hair on TikTok.
Yeah. But like across the board, if while you're growing a company, you need to have good people in your 100%. Corner. And so I have, and I'm going to mention their names real quick because they mean more to me. And they're the reason I fucking work 16 hours a day, because I'm like, listen, I have people depending on the shit that I do to make sure they get a paycheck so they can go home, they can save for their kids and so on and so forth. Like I have Jenna Lee, who runs my kennel, who's like my right-hand lady. She's the greatest fucking lady on the planet. We do Tuesday lives with her every question and answer every day. I have my amazing trainers. I have Anthony, Michelle. Anthony's been with me forever, ex-military guy, great guy. Michelle, who loves you guys, dude. So
she was the one that reached out to us.
Hi, Michelle.
What's up, Michelle?
You better mention my name.
Yeah. What's up, Michelle? Shout out to Michelle.
Dude, that's what my girlfriend said when we talked to Tommy Davis. Like, tell him I said hello, and I was like,
dude,
why?
I heard you mention that. The same last name. Nice.
Yeah.
In there.
She's gonna be so happy to hear you say that. We're gonna go and hang out in New York, in August, and she was like, oh my God, babe, I'm so excited to meet Tommy. And I was like, fucking, what about me, bro? Like, I'm going to be there too,
He's like, I also train dogs.
Yeah. I'm like, hi, Dog Trainers Podcast. But yeah, I guess not. All right.
Yeah. Our parents and our girlfriends don't give a shit about what we do.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, right? Wow. But I got to give the rest of them props too. So Anthony, Michelle, I have Rachel, Aaron, Travis. Those are my trainers. Then we also have Donna, who's our new trainer, Emily, our new trainer, Joyce is our trainer at our kennel.
I love that. And I know you're having different locations now, right?
Yeah, dude. So we just moved out to we're moving out to. I might as well tell you guys. So we're moving out to Ohio, Akron, and then eventually
like
Cleveland,
another location
Ohio.
Or the whole company.
No, yeah, another location. So I have another trainer starting out there.
Wow.
And then I'll bounce back there every now and again, and then we'll hire a couple for there. And then we're going to move down to North Carolina eventually as well.
Oh, that's amazing.
So,
nice, man.
Yeah, one of my trainers who I just hired, who's with me now, she's a 20-something year veteran of 25-year practitioner of physical therapy. Wow. And she said, "Hey, I love helping people, but I love dogs. Been studying dogs," and gave me her whole resume. And I hired her, and she has 2 houses, one in North Carolina and here. So,
wow,
dude, isn't the world a funny fucking place? We got an email from someone in Spain, and shout out to Lucia, and she's a psychologist, right?
Yeah,
and she sent us an email and was like, "Hey guys, love the podcast. I'm a psychologist, but I really think I want to be a dog trainer." And we were like, "Go for it!" Like, that's cool. Like it's always interesting to see, just people are so different and talented in all these different ways, and all just decide to come together. Like dog training is way more interesting than I think people give it credit for.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah,
I mean, it also depends on the teacher, right? Like I've watched some dog trainers before, and I'm like, oof, like this is the human is not involved at all, and the human is not engaged at all. The dog will fail. Even if you're the best fucking trainer in the world, if the owner is not engaged, involved, and understanding that everything is being said, they will fail. And I've said this once again, right? I say this line all the time, and then I listen to it might have been your interview with Michael Ellis or somebody else's. I think it was your interview, and he says it much better, right? As he should,
as Michael Ellis does.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to butcher another one of his lines. Bless my heart. But he talks about, like, you can have the greatest dog training program in the world.
Yep.
But if you can't get the human to do, the human only does 20% of the program, that dog is not going to be as good as somebody who has an average program, but that human bought into the program 100%.
Dude, exactly.
And that is, that is everything, right? So it all comes down to the teacher, and we are not teaching just dogs. And realistically, we are, I don't know how you guys do in-home. So we do in-homes only. We don't do board and train. Yeah. I own a kennel, like a daycare boarding kennel. So I have a trainer who trains dogs that are there for overnight and whatnot.
Right.
But when you're training at somebody's house and you're there for 2 hours, and then in 3 weeks you're there for an hour, and 3 weeks you're there for an hour, you're not going to make, you're going to make a big difference in the dog's life in those 4 hours that you spend with it or whatever. But you better be damn good at teaching this human on how to deal with this for the next 20 days throughout your program.
Right.
And if you notice that people are struggling, like especially early on in my career, I'm like, okay, this dog's fixed. And I would leave a house and be like, all right, dog's fixed, right? Dog's done. It should be perfect. Game, set, and over. And people are struggling. I'm like, Jesus, are they just not competent? You should never think that way as a dog trainer. Right. What you should do, and this is the hardest part of my fucking job, is every time there's a problem, I go, what did I do? And what do I need to change? Like, what did I do or not explain the right way? What did I do wrong? What should I change? Because listen, there's definitely times where it's the client's fault, right? I understand that. But you don't want to get into the mindset where you go, it's the client's fault. It's not. It's
Right.
how do I explain this different? And I like my staff, and Jenny's on my staff too. I love Jenny. And you guys are going to really like this. I don't know if you remember at the beginning of the show, I was talking about one of my mentors. And there's not many, oh, bless your heart. There's not many people that know this. So I'll explain it.
Is this a Dog Trainers podcast exclusive right now?
It is. Yeah, this is the first time I've ever said this in public.
This is wonderful.
So my uncle, Andy, the guy who taught me everything, one of the greatest people on the planet. My secretary's name is now Andy, and my secretary is now my uncle, who runs basically my company behind the scenes.
Wow.
Dude. So like 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years, it's 3.5 years ago. Jesus, Andy, don't kill me. 3.5 years ago, we were, I was just getting over flooded. Like I had 4 employees and I was doing everything behind the scenes myself and training for 10 hours a day.
Right.
So I was like, Andy, I need, can you be my secretary? He just retired. Right. And he's like, oh, I don't want a full-time job. I'm like, I'd just be a couple hours a day. Now he's working like 11 hours.
Yeah. Right. Thanks, Unc. That's dope.
Yeah. So that's my uncle, and he's the greatest fucking guy on the planet. He's somebody who won't let me get away with anything either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I appreciate because it's hard working
Mm-hmm.
with family. I don't, I've heard horror stories, but it's like, hey, you got to fucking do this. Like they've asked, you got to do. I'm like, all right, God damn it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
yeah, they keep you honest. They keep you on top of shit. Yeah. My mentor is still in my life, and he will be till the day he dies, whether he likes it or not. So that's just how it is.
Hey, question for you, man. So shifting gears a little bit, we're talking about the different trainers, including your uncle and all the amazing people on your staff who I was trying to write down to give them shout outs, but I couldn't get them quick enough. So I'm sorry. Do you follow or have you followed any like R plus trainers, any like positive only trainers?
Yeah, I have. And I followed a lot more on TikTok at one point. And then I got off of it because it was negativity after negativity. Like when I see people start, because I see people start bashing tools or start bashing other trainers. Like I have one time in my entire career mentioned somebody by name and like poorly, and I actually felt terrible after I did it. I was watching, and I'm going to say it here again so I can apologize again. But I was watching a Zach George video, and I'm like, dude, this is, and I said, I'm like, dude, this is not what you guys should be doing. This is really poor training in this video. Right. And afterwards, I'm like, hey, dickhead, why put that negativity out? Just show the right thing. You don't even need to put the guy on blast. But I do follow him just because I the guy is successful. I don't care if he's a good dog trainer or not a good dog trainer.
There's respect. There's respect on some realm. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And then, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, man. Go ahead. Finish your point.
I follow Denise a lot now.
Yeah.
I started following her probably right when Jonas was talking to her. I think is when I started following her, and I appreciate her. I think she's more balanced than she knows. And I think, and I think she admits that all the time too. She's like, I'm definitely more balanced than people think, but I appreciate her more than anything, her conversation. It's like, I don't really want to make a tremendous amount of friends who don't like what I do, but I would at least listen to all of them. Right. I'm never going to bash them. I'll listen to all of them, and I would say, oh, that's, it's a really interesting point of view. Thank you so much. So she's my new favorite on that front. And I've watched a lot of her stuff.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. So the reason why I ask is because, and it's funny that you bring up Zach George because, I watch a decent amount of Zach George stuff here and there too. What fascinates me about Zach George is I think, if I'm not mistaken, your Instagram page is probably the biggest dog trainer's Instagram page I've seen. Well, like Balance Trainer's Instagram page. I know that Tommy Davis is probably like the biggest balanced dog trainer online period because of the YouTube channel.
I think YouTube, yeah.
But if I'm not mistaken, though, Zach George is like the biggest dog trainer in the world right now.
On
YouTube. And what's always fascinated me about him, because you're right, you're totally right, is I do hear him here and there talk about how tools are a mistake and stuff like that. And I'm just kind of like, all right, buddy, like get with the video, let's go, But what fascinates me about him that nobody can knock at all is the motherfucker apparently stays very busy, and also his camera skills are pretty good. Like he's very
production.
personable for the video and all that good stuff. The word that I use when I describe him is the polish is there, you know, and I can appreciate that. And I just find that something worth mentioning when talking about these different trainers, because there are also, you know, some other trainers who just spend all their time like bashing tools and, you know, and everything else who, you know, who Brent and I like. There's someone that we think of often, but we just don't want to name names, just not to
give Voldemort.
Yeah. But you know,
I couldn't listen to Zach George anymore. You know, he doesn't bash trainers because he's too busy plugging products. You know what I mean? But
honestly, I was inspired. I was like, wow, he's got like a got a subscription, a lot of with
endorsements.
Yeah, you know, and I'm like, well, but it just shows that it's possible. It's like Caesar,
yeah, for
you know?
sure. Good for. I mean, there's a little hate just because I'm like, dang, like that. Okay,
but that's not even. That's just
20 minutes of before and after. Oh, and you should try this product. And also,
but that's the latest of it though. Like like on top of the YouTube channel, which in and of
right.
itself makes money, and then he's got these endorsements, and then he had his TV show on Animal Planet, and he's got books, and he's got
and this is one of those things. It's like, you know, you can hate on what people are doing, or you could just go do something better, right? And hence
100%.
the podcast. Hence the podcast, right?
Yeah.
And so I've always been pissed. Like, I love Caesar, right? And I love Caesar. You know, he was that show. The format of that show was like one of a kind, right? But then you see a lot of these dog shows following the exact same format now. There's nothing special, right? No one's getting smarter or learning anything different. Or you see like YouTube videos. No one's getting smarter or learning anything different. You see some of these TikTok trainers. No one's getting smarter or learning anything different, right? And so I think I was getting angry at that. So fuck it. Let's do something different, right? And here we are. Ta-da.
I dig it. I like this a lot.
Thanks, man.
So, I listen to Jonas's episodes, Gada's episodes. I listen to Tom's episodes. I like those. Those were good ones too. Yeah, they're just great. And for me, I listen to them because I know these people just via watching them on, just like anybody else, right? You think you know them, right? I say I know these people. Well, John, I talk to a little bit more, but you know, via text and Messenger and whatnot. He's funny as hell.
Yeah, he is.
But when you listen to them, like, dude, these guys are people, and you listen to their stories and you listen to them talk, and sometimes we forget about that. Like, you know, the old, you know, you don't know the person just because you follow them on Instagram. Right. But you feel like you do. But when you listen to them talk, especially not for like a 20-second clip about dogs, when you listen to them talk and listen to their stories, and it's like,
you hear the passion.
Wow, you know, this is, it's a you know, there's a guy back there, there's a girl back there. So, this show's awesome. I really appreciate the show.
Thanks, man. Thanks. We really appreciate that you appreciate the show, because it's like, you know, like, this was initially intended for like newer dog trainers. And what's interesting is, like, you know, we've had like Larry Crone on here and Michael Ellis, and like some of these people have been doing it 20, 30, 40 years. And all of them kind of say the same thing. It's like, we're constantly learning. You're constantly learning something new.
Forever.
You know, you're constantly a student. And, you know, it's really interesting because, you know, I was watching a martial arts thing. We talk about jiu-jitsu on this podcast all the time, thanks to Mariano. And, you know,
he'll put it on me.
So much, it's your fault. There's so much parallel between like the martial arts, right? Art being the emphasis word, and dog training, the art of dog training, right? And you kind of see how, you know, you can have different masters in karate, and they all have slightly different techniques, but they all have similar foundations, you know?
Yeah.
And it's crazy. It's crazy. And you can see how you interpret a move or a context, whether it's short distance, whether it's long distance, whether it's a mid-range attack, like all of that stuff is where the artistry is. And there's almost infinite amount of possibilities of how you could do something. Right?
100. Yeah. And not only is there a million possibilities on how you can do something, there's a million possibilities on how to explain it to somebody so they can understand it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is our bread and butter. I want to communicate with my clients. So I don't like to, like, you guys watch my videos. It's not like I'm a fairly smart human being, but I talk basically like a fucking average run of the mill Pittsburgh guy. You know what I mean? It's not like I say any of these giant words or anything like that, but I want to talk to my clients like they're my family, or like my neighbor who doesn't need one, smoke blown up their ass. Right. I'm not going to come over and be like, yeah, it looks great. And the dog's fucking lunging at me. But they also don't need belittled. Like, listen, you know, and that's something that's really, so literally, I always have a new trainer with me, right? With me. And something that's important to understand, and I always kind of forget this too. I fall into this rut. Even the most minor detail, your clients don't understand it.
Right.
So if you kind of glaze over something that is a minor detail yet very important because you believe that everybody else has the knowledge that's inside your head, then you lose that relationship between the client and their dog, right? Because you forgot to explain something, or you just didn't explain the importance behind it.
Right.
But yeah, and there's a million ways to explain that importance. It's just what's easiest for you to say.
And that's a good point, because part of me might skip. Back in the day, I used to skip over things because I've said it 100 times that week, or I've said it. And so I used to always do this thing, and my trainers who worked with me and my training assistants who worked under me, they'd be like, Brent, why you come up with new stories all the time? And I was like, because I got to figure out a way to say, like, kind of like Gary Vee. If you follow Gary Vee, he always says,
love Gary Vee.
Yeah, he always says, like, he's like, you say the same 12 things over and over and over in different ways. And he's like, yeah, that's actually the art of it. Like, how can I explain the same thing? How can I explain control? How can I explain, management? How can I explain it in a way that might be new, fresh, different? Because, and it's funny enough, as much as it was also to try and get through to that client, that one client that maybe
what you're about to say, I love this.
I did it for my entertainment also.
100%, dude. You got to keep it fresh, right? But that's the thing, because then you end up going through a script, right? And like anything, this is how you burn out. So you have to create new shit. And I try new shit all the time because I want to entertain myself.
Yes.
I want to see, like, and I'm like, okay, well, hey, listen, I know this. These are bread and butter. This is going to be, this is why we're successful. I got an extra 15, 20 minutes. You know what I mean? And it's not like we're putting dogs. I'm not talking about, when I say try something new, I'm not saying, hey, I'm going to try a new leash technique because I'm just,
try it in a different order.
Exactly.
Instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, see if you can do 2, 3, 1, 4, and see if it works out, Yeah. Hey, everybody, it's Brent with the Dog Trainers Podcast. You want to know how to help us grow? By subscribing and leaving us a review. It helps others find us, ranks us higher on search results, and broadens our ability to connect with amazing listeners just like you. And now, back to the show.